Madonna walked into a small Harlem church on a Sunday morning in 2008, hoping nobody would recognize her. She was there for research, looking for authentic gospel sounds for her new album. But what she heard from the back row of the choir changed everything. A woman in a simple white robe was singing "Amazing Grace" with a voice so powerful, so filled with raw emotion, that Madonna felt tears streaming down her face before she even realized she was crying. At the end of the service, Madonna did something she'd never done before. She walked up to that choir singer and said 5 words that would change both of their lives forever. "I dare you to go pop." 10 years later, that church singer became one of the biggest superstars in music, and the story of how it happened reveals a side of Madonna the world never knew existed. It was a crisp October morning, and Madonna had woken up feeling restless. She was in the middle of recording what would eventually become her Hard Candy album, but something felt missing. The producers kept suggesting they sample classic gospel tracks, but Madonna hated the idea of using someone else's soul secondhand. "If I'm going to use gospel," she'd told her producer the night before, "I want the real thing. I want to hear it in the place where it's meant to be heard." So she'd done what she always did when she needed authenticity. She went looking for it herself. No entourage, no photographers, just Madonna in jeans and a simple jacket, her hair pulled back under a headscarf, slipping into the back of Mount Zion Baptist Church on 125th Street. The church was small, maybe holding 200 people at capacity, and that morning it was about 3/4 full. The congregation was predominantly black, predominantly older, and predominantly surprised when this white woman in a headscarf slipped into the back pew just as the service was beginning. A few people glanced at her, but nobody made a fuss. Mount Zion had always welcomed strangers, and besides, most of the congregation had no idea they were sitting 30 feet away from the Queen of Pop. For the first hour, Madonna sat quietly, absorbing everything. The energy in the room was unlike anything she'd experienced in years of performing to stadium crowds. There was a rawness to the faith here, an honesty in the way people sang and prayed that made her music industry life feel hollow by comparison. The choir was good, really good. 15 voices that blended together with the kind of precision that only came from years of singing together. But it was the voice coming from the back row of the choir that made Madonna's breath catch in her throat. Sister Angela Morrison was 42 years old and had been singing in the Mount Zion choir since she was 7. She worked as a nurse at Harlem Hospital, sang at church on Sundays, and had never performed anywhere else in her entire life. She had a husband who drove a bus for the MTA, 3 kids in public school, and a voice that could make angels jealous. When the choir director announced the final hymn, "Amazing Grace," Angela stepped forward to take the lead vocal. It was something she'd done 1,000 times before, a familiar song in a familiar place with familiar people. Just another Sunday. But the moment Angela opened her mouth, Madonna understood why she'd felt compelled to come to this church on this particular morning. The voice that came out of Angela Morrison wasn't just technically perfect, though it was that. It wasn't just powerful, though it shook the rafters of that small church. It was something deeper, something that Madonna, with all her years of performing and producing and collaborating with the best vocalists in the world, had rarely encountered. It was a voice that carried actual pain, actual joy, actual faith. Every note seemed to come from somewhere beyond technique, beyond training. Angela sang like someone who had lived every word of that hymn, who had experienced the grace she was singing about and wanted desperately to share it with everyone in that room. Madonna felt the tears before she understood what was happening. She wasn't someone who cried easily. Decades in the entertainment industry had taught her to keep her emotions carefully controlled. But sitting in that back pew, listening to Angela Morrison sing about being lost and found, Madonna felt something crack open inside her chest. By the time Angela reached the final verse, Madonna was openly weeping. The woman sitting next to her offered a tissue, assuming these were tears of religious conviction. Madonna took it, dabbing at her eyes, but her tears weren't about religion. They were about recognition. She was hearing the voice she'd been searching for her entire career. When the service ended, Madonna sat very still while the congregation filed out. She watched Angela hug elderly church members, laugh with children, exchange warm words with the pastor. This was Angela's world. Comfortable, safe, beloved. Madonna almost left, almost convinced herself that what she was thinking was crazy, that she should just thank the pastor for the experience and go back to her studio and her producers and her carefully constructed pop music life. But then she remembered something her first voice coach had told her back in 1981. When you hear a voice that makes you cry, you owe it to the world to help that voice be heard. So Madonna stood up, straightened her jacket, and walked toward the front of the church where Angela was stacking hymn books. "Excuse me," Madonna said quietly. Angela turned, and for the first time the two women looked directly at each other. Angela saw a white woman in casual clothes with kind eyes and an intensity that was slightly unsettling. She had no idea who she was talking to. "Yes? Can I help you with something?" "That was the most beautiful thing I've ever heard," Madonna said. "The way you sang Amazing Grace. I've heard that song performed by professional singers, by Grammy winners, by people who've trained their entire lives. But I've never heard anyone sing it like you just did." Angela smiled, gracious and modest. "Thank you. That's very kind. I've been singing it my whole life." "I know," Madonna said. "I can tell. That's why it sounded like that." There was something in the way she said it that made Angela pause. This wasn't just polite post-service chit-chat. This woman was seeing something, understanding something that most people missed. "I'm sorry," Angela said. "I don't think I caught your name." Madonna pulled off her headscarf, and Angela's eyes went wide. "Oh, my Lord," Angela whispered. "I'm Madonna," she said simply, "and I need to talk to you about something important." What happened in the next 20 minutes would change Angela Morrison's life forever, though she didn't know it yet. Madonna asked if they could sit down, and Angela, still slightly in shock, led her to a quiet corner of the church. "I'm going to say something that's going to sound crazy," Madonna began, "but I need you to hear me out, okay?" Angela nodded, her mind still trying to process that Madonna was sitting next to her in her church. "You're wasting your gift," Madonna said bluntly. Angela's face went from confusion to offense in about 2 seconds. "I'm sorry, what?" "Not wasting it," Madonna corrected quickly. "That's the wrong word. You're containing it. You're keeping it in this room, sharing it with 200 people once a week, when there are millions of people in the world who need to hear what you can do with that voice." "I sing for God," Angela said, her voice getting defensive. "Not for fame or money or—" "I know," Madonna interrupted. "I can hear that in every note. That's exactly why it's so powerful. But here's what I don't understand. If you're really singing for God, why does it matter if you do it in a church or on a stage? Why does it matter if 200 people hear it or 2 million? Angela opened her mouth to respond, then closed it. She'd never thought about it that way. "I dare you," Madonna continued, her voice getting intense, "to take that gift out into the world. Not to stop singing for God, keep doing that. But do it where people who've never set foot in a church can hear it. People who are lost and broken and need that grace you're singing about but would never think to look for it here." "I'm a nurse," Angela said weakly. "I have a family. I have a life. I'm 42 years old. You don't just become a pop singer at 42. You do if you have what you have," Madonna said. "And I'm not talking about becoming me. I'm not talking about dancing in your underwear on MTV. I'm talking about making music that sounds like what I just heard, that gospel truth, but with production and reach that can touch people who would never find their way to Mount Zion Baptist Church. She pulled out a business card and wrote her personal cell phone number on the back. Think about it, Madonna said, pressing the card into Angela's hand. I'm recording right now at Germano Studios in Manhattan. Come by tomorrow, just once. Sing one song, like a prayer. If you want something you might know, but sing it the way you just sang Amazing Grace. If it doesn't work, I'll never bother you again. But if it does. She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. Madonna stood up, put her headscarf back on, and walked out of the church, leaving Angela sitting there with a business card in her trembling hand and a choice that felt impossible. That night, Angela told her husband Marcus about what had happened. He was skeptical, worried, protective. "Baby, we have a good life," he said. "You have a steady job. The kids are doing well in school. Why would you risk all that to chase some crazy dream?" But Angela's mother, who was visiting for Sunday dinner, had a different perspective. "Your grandmother had a voice like yours," she said quietly. "Did you know that? People said she could have been the next Mahalia Jackson, but she was too scared to leave Memphis, too scared to try something bigger. She sang in church her whole life, and she was happy. I'm not saying she wasn't. But sometimes I'd catch her listening to gospel records on the radio, and I'd see this look on her face, like she was wondering what could have been." Angela didn't sleep that night. She kept thinking about her grandmother, about that look her mother described, about the idea of reaching people who needed grace but didn't know where to find it. At 7 a.m. the next morning, Angela called the number on the card. Madonna picked up on the second ring. "I knew you'd call," Madonna said simply. 2 hours later, Angela Morrison walked into a professional recording studio for the first time in her life. Her hands were shaking. She was wearing her nursing scrubs because she'd come straight from a night shift. She looked completely out of place among the expensive equipment and the cool, confident studio musicians who were setting up. Madonna met her at the door and led her to the vocal booth. "No pressure," Madonna said. "This is just between us. If you hate it, we delete everything and pretend this never happened. But I think you should at least try." They started with "Like a Prayer" because Angela knew the words. But Madonna stopped her after the first verse. "You're singing it too carefully," Madonna said through the talkback. "Forget about me. Forget about the microphone. Sing it like you sang Amazing Grace yesterday. Sing it for the people who need it." Angela closed her eyes. She thought about her patients at the hospital, the ones who were scared, the ones who were dying, the ones who had lost hope. She thought about her own moments of doubt and faith, about the times when prayer was the only thing that got her through. And then she sang. What came out of the studio monitors in the next 4 minutes made everyone in the control room stop what they were doing. The engineer, who'd worked with Aretha Franklin and Whitney Houston, actually stood up from his chair. Madonna's producer had tears running down his face. Angela took Madonna's pop anthem and transformed it into something that felt like both a prayer and a celebration, both a lament and a triumph. Her voice soared and cracked and recovered, filled with every emotion that had been building in her for 42 years of singing in that small Harlem church. When she finished, there was complete silence in the studio. Then Madonna's voice came through the talkback, thick with emotion. "That's what I heard. That's exactly what I heard." What happened next took 3 years, not 10. I need to be honest about that. The entertainment industry moves slowly, especially for someone who didn't fit their usual formula. Angela was too old, too unknown, too unconventional. She wasn't trying to be sexy or edgy or provocative. She was just trying to sing truth. But Madonna refused to give up. She produced a full album with Angela, blending gospel and pop in ways that hadn't been done before. She used her influence to get meetings with record labels, and when they all said no, she released Angela's first single on her own label. The song was called Grace in the Breaking, and it combined Angela's church choir background with modern production. The lyrics were about finding faith in the darkest moments, sung with that same raw power Madonna had heard in Mount Zion. It didn't immediately top the charts. But it found its audience, people dealing with loss, with illness, with struggles that required something deeper than typical pop music could offer. The song became a phenomenon in hospitals, in support groups, in places where people needed hope. By year 5, Angela had won her first Grammy. By year 7, she was selling out concert halls. By year 10, she was headlining festivals and collaborating with everyone from Kirk Franklin to Adele. But she never forgot where she came from. Every album included at least one traditional hymn. She still sang at Mount Zion Baptist Church once a month when she wasn't touring. And she always dedicated her performances to "The Woman Who Dared Me to Stop Hiding." In 2018, when Angela won her third Grammy, Madonna was sitting in the audience. As Angela walked to the stage to accept the award for Best Pop Vocal Album, she stopped and looked directly at Madonna. 10 years ago, Angela said into the microphone, someone heard me singing in a church and told me I was singing to the wrong audience. At the time, I thought that was the most offensive thing anyone had ever said to me. The crowd laughed, not understanding. But what she meant was that grace isn't meant to be kept in a building. It's meant to be shared everywhere, in concert halls and on the radio and anywhere people are hurting and need to be reminded that they're loved. Angela's voice cracked with emotion. Madonna, you were right. Thank you for daring me to stop being afraid. The camera cut to Madonna, who was openly crying, just like she had been that first Sunday morning in Harlem. After the ceremony, they met backstage. It had been months since they'd seen each other. Angela's touring schedule had been brutal. I'm exhausted, Angela admitted. Sometimes I miss just singing on Sundays and going home to a quiet life. Do you regret it? Madonna asked. Angela was quiet for a moment. Last month, a woman came up to me after a show. She told me that she was planning to kill herself, but she heard Grace in the Breaking on the radio, and it made her want to live. She said my voice reminded her that she wasn't alone. Angela looked at Madonna with tears in her eyes. How could I regret that? If this life means even one person chooses to stay alive, chooses to keep fighting, chooses to believe they're worth loving, then every exhausted moment is worth it. Madonna pulled her into a hug. That's why I cried that first morning. I heard something in your voice that the world needed. And I knew if I didn't at least try to help it reach beyond those church walls, I'd regret it for the rest of my life. The story of Madonna and Angela Morrison became legendary in the music industry. Not because it was a typical star-make-star story, but because it represented something deeper. It was about recognizing brilliance in unexpected places. It was about having the courage to challenge someone to be bigger than they thought possible. It was about understanding that sacred music and secular music aren't opposites. They're both trying to touch the same human need for connection, for hope, for grace. Today, Angela Morrison is one of the most respected vocalists in the industry. She's collaborated with everyone from Beyoncé to Andrea Bocelli. Her concerts sell out arenas. Her albums go platinum. But if you ask her about her success, she always tells the same story about a Sunday morning in Harlem when a stranger dared her to stop hiding. And Madonna, who's launched countless careers and influenced millions of artists, says that discovering Angela was one of the most important things she's ever done. People think I'm just about provocation and controversy, Madonna said in a recent interview. But the truth is, I've spent my whole career searching for authentic voices, in myself and in others. When I heard Angela sing that morning, I heard something so real, so powerful, that I couldn't let it stay hidden. That's not about me being generous. That's about me being selfish. I needed that voice to exist in the world because the world is better with it. There's a lesson in this story that goes beyond the music industry. How many Angela Morrisons are out there right now, singing in small rooms, sharing their gifts with limited audiences, never realizing that what they have could touch millions? How many people are keeping their talents contained because they're afraid of what might happen if they tried for something bigger? And how many of us walk past brilliance every single day without recognizing it because it doesn't come in the package we expect? Madonna could have enjoyed that church service and gone back to her studio and hired a session singer to mimic the gospel sound she wanted. That would have been easier. That would have been safer. But instead, she took the harder path. She challenged someone to be more than they were, knowing it would be uncomfortable, knowing there would be resistance, knowing it might not work. Angela could have ignored that business card, could have stayed in her comfortable life, could have convinced herself that 42 was too old to start over. That would have been easier. That would have been safer. But instead, she walked into that studio with shaking hands and took a chance on something that terrified her. And because both of them chose courage over comfort, millions of people have been touched by music that might never have existed. At Mount Zion Baptist Church, there's now a small plaque that reads, "On this day in October 2008, Sister Angela Morrison sang Amazing Grace and changed the world. May we all have the courage to share our gifts beyond these walls." Every Sunday, the choir still sings that hymn. And every time they do, they sing it a little bit louder, knowing that somewhere in the world, someone might be listening who needs to hear it. Someone who could be the next Angela Morrison, waiting for someone to dare them to stop hiding. If this story inspired you to recognize the brilliance in unexpected places, subscribe to this channel for more untold stories about the moments when celebrities used their power to lift others up. Have you ever encouraged someone to pursue a dream they were afraid to chase? Or been pushed by someone to be bigger than you thought you could be? Share your story in the comments, because we all have the power to be the person who dares someone else to stop hiding. And don't forget to hit that notification bell for more incredible true stories about the transformative power of seeing potential in others.